are unions more important than ever for voiceovers, musicians, and writers? It's a good question. Now look, Hollywood loves a happy ending, but reality doesn't. I know that. Every artist knows that. You don't do art for money. I mean, not really. I mean, money is nice. It helps your art to eat. But the last 20 years represents something so insidious for artists. I mean, I have to kind of say it that way because I know I'm ignoring reality. And I know I'm advocating reshaping reality. Like a guy on a horse tilting at windmills. I mean, what I'm about to say is undoable and yet so necessary. And I have to ask myself, why is my ambition so Don Quixote?
The Convo with Chris McHale.
I arrived outside of NBC in Chicago, and I was late. Not unusual for me. You know, the picket line was in action, round and round. And I didn't want a sign to carry or a T-shirt to wear. I wanted to join, walk, witness. This was the third strike of my career, and none of them had turned out that well for talent. And I wasn't particularly hopeful this round either. In 2023, the Writers Guild of America, WGA, brought Hollywood to a grinding halt, highlighting the ongoing battle for fair compensation in an increasingly digital media landscape. Talk about tilting at windmills. Silicon Valley operates in a post-ethics culture. That's the way I see it. And now the entire industry, entertainment industry, was following suit. Ethics out the window is the way I see it. Look, I've made a good living from royalty, mostly on contracts signed before 2007. Post-2007 is an apocalypse. And this is where things get confusing. And I want to try to get this right at the beginning of this discussion. I'm looking at two lanes. One lane I call community theater, and the other I call professional theater. I'm not really talking about theater, but what I am talking about is amateur art and professional art. And separating those two is essential because mixing them up makes a mess, a big mess. If you spend any time on social media, you've probably been involved in endless debates about AI and what's good and the future of creativity and everything that goes on. But where it gets confusing is we're actually talking about two different things here in my mind. What I would call community theater and professional theater. Amateur art and professional art. Look, community theater is beautiful. People join together for art, putting in all that work to create something from the heart. I mean, I haven't done much community theater myself, but I've got good friends who love it and use it to express their art on the most personal terms. It's a communal commitment to music and performance and beauty and sets and designs and light, an entire group coming together for expression. You cannot beat it. Community theater is special, but it is not what I am talking about. I'm talking about professional theater, professional art, professional artists, the people that put butts in the seat. You know, ticket prices are in the hundreds. It's an 8-day-a-week commitment. Curtain at 8, unions, SRO, success, long runs, and money in the bank. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about the things I'm going into in this conversation. We have two different worlds with two different needs. All right? This conversation is about professional art, professionals. And that is a world that is vital to our economy. It makes money. It's profit. That's important to keep in mind. I make these distinctions because others do not. Others sort of confuse us. There's a lot out there, and you have to wonder why. I mean, it's almost like there's a crusade to break the professional ranks and free corporate interests to use professional art in any way they want. And you can't help but thinking maybe the end game, maybe, is the destruction of copyright, which is copyright is a great inconvenience in the plans of some Silicon Valley businesses. Copyright gets in the way. Okay, so understand what I am talking about in this conversation is not addressed to what I see called the democratization of creativity. All right? It's not really about that. It's about creatives who make a living with skills at the highest level and who put in the time to take their art into the upper echelons of achievement. It's rarefied air up there, and most of us don't get there. I mean, you have to kind of be touched by the universe to have those kind of skills. You have to be born with them. You know, I went to Berkeley College in Boston, and I don't have that level of skill. But there were people there who could just sit down at the piano and play anything they heard in their head. You know, those are the people I'm talking about, the people who are gifted. And there's millions of them, and they really power the business. They produce revenue in the millions, the billions for corporations, for brands, for governments. And they need their work compensated fairly and protected from misuse. And that is what this conversation is about. So I'm not walking in circles outside of NBC on a fine spring day for the benefit of all artists, but for the protection of working artists. However, the beautiful thing about our line, our picket line, is what I would call a halo effect, because what we're doing actually will protect all artists, whether they're in community theater or professional theater. Because ultimately, wouldn't it be great to make money from your art? I mean, ultimately, it's about the end goal of your life, career, health, and family. My very first union card was Local 802. You know those guys. Every time you go into a theater, you hear them. They're in the pit, and they're playing all the melodies that make you go, wow, and they kind of make your foot tap, and they make your heart go bippity-bop. Those guys are essential to performance. And holding that 802 card, my first union card, meant everything to me. It defined a career, a path, and security for my family. But more than anything, it meant that if people profited from my work, I was fairly compensated. That is what this is about. This is not about somebody dropping a beat onto Spotify. This is about a creative engine that turns profit. Actors, writers, musicians, the world, professional, money-making creativity dies without these guys, and they need to be paid. We need to be paid. We need to be protected. We need to be nurtured. Musicians have faced their struggles, but with royalty disputes erupting all over the joint, like streaming, services dominating the market, it's been tough. Silicon Valley really has no intention of fair compensation or, I believe, copyright protection. They just want a revenue stream into the pockets of executives with low cost and rocket-fueled profits. Now, in all these cases that we're talking about, the musicians, the voiceovers, the writers, union plays a pivotal role advocating for artists, creators, and performers who often find themselves at the mercy of this rapidly evolving entertainment industry. Their role in securing fair compensation is a reassuring beacon for us, for creative professionals. I mean, in this world, the union stands up, and it's like drawing more and more to their ranks because it's becoming obvious we need this. I mean, who else? Who else is going to organize against these big pocket technology companies or entertainment companies? Look, since the Reagan predecessor, since the guy Ronald Reagan was president. Unions have been under attack more than ever. Unions get in the way. Unions are rude. Unions don't do what they're told. They put workers first. Nothing charges me up more than watching my brothers and sisters in the union, like working together and creating a force. A force. It's like a mosquito bite on the big butt of fancy executives. We don't want to go away, but we need more than we have. I mean, everybody does. But more than anything, what this conversation is about is we need working artists of every generation to join us. Young artists have got to see what this is and come to us and join us. The more we get together, the happier we will be. As the digital economic crunch comes in greater force, the disruption strikes at the heart of our health and our family, and unions have now become indispensable for voiceover artists, musicians, writers, actors, anyone involved in the creative field. And they're offering more than just financial protection. Much more so. The entertainment industry is growing more complex, particularly with the rise of digital platforms and artificial intelligence, AI. The need for structured advocacy has never, ever been greater than it is today. Unions are our only shot at securing fair wages and to protect our creative rights, ensuring that we have some say over how our work is used. Otherwise, what? Otherwise what? Otherwise what? Look, I'm going to put this as simply as I can. How do you do all that? How do you get a fair wage and protect your creative rights and maintain some control over your work if you're on your own? I mean, how do you do that on your own? How do you do it on your own? You don't. And that is big tech's whole point, in my opinion. That's big entertainment industry's whole point, to isolate us into single units, to simply exploit us, to repackage every aspect of our humanity. That's what it feels like, to monetize us. Like these hairless bodies you see in the Matrix movies. We're all kind of wired in and pumping big profit into the pockets of an elite super class. I mean, come on. From negotiating fair royalties for streaming to establishing standardized rates for voiceover artists working in new media. Unions provide a collective voice for those who might otherwise be unheard. Who are those who might be unheard? Me and you. Anyone who picks up a pencil, picks up a brush, learns some digital art skills, any of us who then thinks like, I'd like to make a living like this. I'd like to pay my rent and maybe buy a dinner, like normal. That's who I'm talking to. This is about us. Look, what I'm saying is heresy in Silicon Valley, particularly their little idea of what they call the creator economy, which is just the same thing that we've always had, but it doesn't pay as well. Creativity is for the people, they'll say. Copyright is the devil, they'll say. The democratization of creativity is free speech. It's free. I'll give you that. But free doesn't pay the rent or feed your family. Or even if you're successful in the new lanes of the creator economy, because some people are, you're working long hours on your own with no protection. I mean, look, it's a rough world out there, huh? Capitalism, predatory capitalism, nobody's going to help you one-on-one. What chance do you have? You have no chance at all. It's the way I see it. It comes down to this. When creative industries undergo seismic shifts, unions offer stability, collective power, the ability to negotiate better terms, ensuring that artists and creators aren't left behind in the race for technological advancement. Look, AI AI is a fascinating tool, okay? Really, I've played with it. It's fun. It's great. But the price of AI can't be the artist's livelihood. I mean, that is just not good. That's not a good thing. You can't just rip people off and say like, well, it's the price of advancement. Really?
The convo.
All right. Early in the 20th century, 4 men had dinner in an Italian restaurant on a gas-lit street on the Lower East Side of New York City, on Orchard Street. They were all composers, and they had all had success getting their songs published and played. Their songs were played in every saloon, from the Battery to the Bowery and up on the Upper West Side, up to Harlem. They heard their songs everywhere they went. So they thought about this, and they had this idea. They wanted to be paid every time those songs were played. Wow. I mean, outlandish. I mean, oh my gosh. How can you even think of something like that? They formed ASCAP, the American Society for Composers and Performers, and created a fair composition system for artists. And it worked. The rise of unions in the creative industry and performance royalty societies in the creative industry began when artists and writers and performers realized the need for collective representation. SAG-AFTRA, the Writers Guild of America, the American Federation of Musicians were born out of this realization. As these professions and these professionals sought protection from exploitation in a largely unregulated industry, ASCAP, BMI, GAMA, PRO chase royalties globally and ensure fair use of an artist's work. Look, I've had some success here. I've had a show which was aired in 100 countries and which was translated into 40 languages. How am I sitting here in the United States going to collect my royalty when my show is aired in South Korea? Okay? Or North Korea, for that matter, or Germany, or South Africa. I mean, how do I collect those royalties? The answer is I don't. There has to be a global system. How complicated is that? I got good news for you. It's there. And it works. And it's been working for 100 years. That's why I'm kind of wound up about this a little bit. Everything we need to make this work, what I'm talking about, is already in place. All we need is everybody to kind of muck in together. Then we can get some answers to our questions, because that's what negotiation is. We're not going to get that if we're all a million different units. But if we become one, then we send that one representative to the table and say, we want this, we want that. They say, you can't have this. Negotiation goes back and forth. The main point is we have a voice. Without this, we have no voice. Now, why would anybody want us not to have a voice? I actually believe this stuff is for benefit of both sides. I actually believe this leads to a vital creative community that serves both the entertainment industry and the talent. Together, we can build a stable economic environment. But if we leave it to one side or the other, it becomes like, well, we need this and that's the way it's going to be. That's not cool, okay? That's exploitation. And I've seen so much of that in my career that I'm up to here with it, to tell you the truth. I've seen it in South Asia. I've seen it in Japan. I've seen it in California, in Portland, Oregon. I've seen it in Amsterdam. I've seen it in South Africa. I've seen it everywhere I've traveled and everywhere I've worked, and it's just gotten under my skin. The world we built is not really very cool for creatives, okay? We're like the low-hanging fruit. AI, hey, you know what? Let's just take all their work and create AI. Let's do that. What are they going to do? Well, they found out a little bit because we pushed back. SAG pushed back. Writers Guild pushed back. So, just like my local 802 musician's card marked a milestone in my career. Joining a performance royalty society did too. And my music gets played globally in hundreds of countries. I can't track that. So we need these artist organizations. They are our voice. If you ever hope to buy a house or have a decent health care in America, particularly, or even critically, a pension, you might want to strengthen unions. You might want to look at your union and look at that path, okay? The democratization of creativity is actually in the unions because a strong union can build a strong career. These unions and these guilds and these royalty societies are not easy to get into, but that's kind of the point, isn't it? I mean, you have to have a professional level of skills to get in your cards and to get BMI to work for you. But so isn't that the goal anyway? I mean, you're going to work really hard because following a creative career is not as easy as like being a banker, or being an account executive in an advertising agency. This is tough work. It never stops. I've been working on my creative since I was 8 years old, and I am not 8 years old anymore. It's a long time. It's a long time, and it never ends. I sit down almost every day to sharpen my skills, to learn new things, to learn new scales on my guitar, and learn some new technology on my digital audio workstation. I've been all over this place. Advertising, television, video games, publishing, animation, radio, albums. I've done it all. Live concerts, production, you name it. I've done it. I've built successful production companies in New York City, and I've worked with the video game industry, helping to build one of the top video game companies in the world. The problems and solutions in all those industries is exactly the same. All right? It doesn't matter if you're living in a house on a hill and you're a fancy dance CEO with nice shirts and pants, or you're got a little studio hole in the wall in Bushwick, Brooklyn. It's the same. Same problems, same solutions. And the CEO and the Bushwick guy are actually need to work together. And that's what this is about. Look, I know, I'm a voice in the wilderness. All right? I know that. I know it. I spent a lot of time out in the wilderness, to be honest with you. Every artist has. And this sort of disposable art, the era of disposable art that we're in, that's got to end because there's no future for any of us in that era. Nothing. There's no future at all. There's future for the guys who want to buy fancy cars and drive them around the beach, but there's no future for working artists unless we get this together. I am naive. I like being naive, and I've had my fill of lawyers and executives tightening the lanes and saying I should make it work for myself on their terms. I can't. Nobody can. Artists in this economy are like toothpaste in a tube, getting squeezed out. Healthcare? No government healthcare. No union healthcare? You figure it out. Only we can't figure it out. Not on our own. We cannot figure it out. Union contracts guarantee standard rates for voiceover artists for commercials, animated series, and video games. At the same time, musicians benefit from collective bargaining agreements that establish session rates and protect against unfair licensing practices. Writers, too. Writers benefit from union-negotiated contracts that ensure they are paid fairly for streaming content, a rapidly growing segment of the entertainment economy. Everything is changing. Hey, 1998 is a way back. 2008, 2018. It's now 2024. Everything changes every 18 months. But without union, there's just no structure for us to organize ourselves. There will not be fair treatment of creative professionals. If you have a dream of making money with your creative, you better listen carefully to what I'm saying, because there is not going to be any way. There's just no way it's going to happen You know, if you're relying on production companies and record labels and media conglomerates to be fair to you, wake up. It's not going to happen. Unions can serve as both advocates and enforcers, because sometimes, you need a little muscle. Constantly negotiate terms as the dynamics of the industry change. Like we said, every 18 months. My last serious royalty performance contract was signed in 2007. The world has changed so much since 2007. It's almost a joke, So we've been doing this for 100 years. 100 years, easily. The AFFM, the Musicians Union, was formed, I think, in like 1898 or something like that. So it's been a long haul, When I was a young creative, I went to New York and people told me, this is what you do, and you follow this path and then you'll have a successful career. That's just what I did. Well, that path isn't there anymore. But the question you have to ask yourself is, why not? Why not? What happened to the path? Where's it gone? Why isn't it there for young creatives? What happened? Well, the answer is it is still there. We have unions. We have performance royalty societies. We have writers' guilds. We have all that in place. I've mentioned a couple of organizations, but there's more than that. And the power is in collective bargaining. I don't mean to sound like a Marxist or whatever gets politicians' underpants in a knot. But the truth is, together, we can put a voice at the negotiating table that has some value and that will speak for us. Other than that, divide and conquer. That's what it feels like to me. This is The Convo. My name is Chris McHale. I am the Chief Creative Officer of Studio Dijiji, studiodijiji.io. Go there, subscribe to this podcast, subscribe to our newsletter, join the site. We're a group of artists, writers, sound designers, musicians, composers who are banding together to innovate in a very tight, evolving, creative industry. I got a little discouraged in the video game world, and I got a little bit discouraged dealing with Hollywood, so we're coming to the table with some new ideas and new ways to work, and we are an artist-first company. Every deal I make is about getting the people that I'm working with paid fairly. And we just signed a contract, or going to sign a contract with SAG-AFTRA for our first show. So all this stuff I've been talking about, not only am I spouting off like a crazy person, but I actually believe this. Thank you so much for listening. This has been The Convo. This is actually our first episode. There's a lot more to come, a lot more guests, a lot more interesting topics, everything creative we're going to be talking about on this show. And I hope you give us a little bit of your time and contribute. We'll be talking again soon. Bye.